In 1940, under the heat of a summer night in China, a covert team of communist soldiers slid silently across the arduous terrain. Their daring objective was as dangerous as it was audacious: to sabotage and dismantle railway lines pulsing with troops and endless supplies, the lifeblood of Japan's mighty war machine. While thousands of miles away, Nazi Germany was unleashing a destructive blitzkrieg. China's recognized government, the Nationalists, found themselves ensnared in an internal two-pronged conflict, battling the tsunami of Japanese imperialism encroaching from one side, while struggling to extinguish the fiery uprisings of an internal communist revolution from the other. Amid this chaos, General Peng Dehuai was fueled by the need to shift the balance in this merciless, all-consuming war, even if he risked the ire of Mao Zedong himself. Sticking together. In the summer of 1940, Western Europe was reeling under the German blitzkrieg, with territories falling like dominoes and British citizens enduring relentless strategic bombardments. However, far to the east, the Second Sino-Japanese War, a bitter and brutal conflict that had ignited 3 years prior, was also escalating. Japan, intent on conquering the massive China to integrate it into its burgeoning empire, was strengthening its mighty war machine on all fronts: military, political, and diplomatic. This increased pressure was straining the National Revolutionary Army, supported by the Kuomintang Nationalist Party, the official government in China. Amidst this tense situation, the nation grappled with another strife, a civil war pitting the nationalists against the communists. Despite their deep-seated political and cultural differences, these two factions struck an uneasy alliance, united against the imposing adversary, Japan. Adding even more complexity, Japan propped up a puppet regime in occupied Chinese territories led by Wang Jingwei. Initially a member of the Kuomintang, the Chinese politician accepted an invitation from the empire to form a Japanese-supported collaborationist government in Nanking in 1937. This move was a direct challenge to the legitimate government of Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, President of the Republic of China. Japan's audacious move sent ripples through the Chinese leadership and set the stage for a bold countermove. Doubling down. Emerging from the disarray of the fractured Chinese army was the strategic and tenacious General Peng Dehuai, who was determined to launch a decisive counteroffensive against the relentless Japanese forces. A soldier since he was 16, Peng had risen through the ranks and now commanded 2/3 of the 8th Route Army, a group army from the Chinese Communist Party. Peng's ascent coincided with the significant growth of communist forces in central China, swelling to approximately 400,000 men spread across 115 regiments by the summer of 1940. Frustrated by the nationalist government's insufficiently aggressive response to the Japanese invasion, Peng planned an offensive with the goal of controlling critical transportation lines threading through all of northern China. At the time, the Japanese army had 3 divisions, 4 regiments from another 2 divisions, 5 independent mixed brigades, and part of 4 independent mixed brigades and cavalry brigades, amounting to approximately 200,000 men. Further boosting their numbers, they were supported by approximately 150,000 collaborationist troops, bolstering their regional presence. The communists wanted to disrupt the Japanese prison cage strategy, which isolated and contained communist forces in pockets, preventing them from freely operating in northern China. However, the planned offensive wasn't just about military victories. The communists also aimed to showcase their commitment to the anti-Japanese war effort and to destabilize Wang Jingwei's puppet government. A successful offensive would be critical to asserting the Chinese Communist Party's influence in China's turbulent political landscape. By the time mid-July rolled in, Peng and his forces began a period of meticulous practice. They collected intelligence, surveyed the terrain, stockpiled supplies, printed Japanese-language propaganda materials, and mobilized local peasants. Opening salvo. In the early hours of August 20th, 1940, over 400,000 Chinese communist soldiers launched a massive assault against the entrenched Japanese forces in northern China. Peng Dehuai, commander of the Communist forces, had initially mobilized 20 regiments for the strategic surprise attack. However, 2 days later, he discovered that more than 4 times that number, over 80 regiments, had taken part, most without his knowledge. The scale of participation by Communist forces would later give the offensive its name. The relentless Chinese offensive hit the Japanese lines like a lightning bolt, catching them off guard and throwing their arranged defenses into utter disarray. Characterized by sabotage, the mobile warfare of the Chinese involved small, nimble groups of soldiers teaming up to cause the maximum disruption to enemy supply and communication lines. Over the next 3 weeks, the Communist Chinese forces waged a relentless campaign, blowing up bridges and tunnels and destroying approximately 600 miles of vital railways. From Dezhou to Shijiazhuang to Taiyuan, cities all across the Hebei and Shanxi provinces in northern China were under attack by its nationals. Furthermore, the occupied Jingxing coal mine, a vital part of Japan's war industry, was put out of action for half a year, marking the most important victory of this phase. Through these bold tactics, the Chinese Communists managed to disrupt the Japanese supply chain and sow chaos even in the highest ranks of their military. The Rising Sun. Despite the initial surprise, the Japanese, under the command of General Yasuji Okamura, quickly rallied their force, and from late September to early October, the action intensified even further. Forces from various regional divisions focused their efforts on key objectives. In one campaign, led by units from a region covering Shanxi, Chahar, and Hebei, they targeted and seized several fortified positions held by the Japanese. At the same time, another group of troops, the 129th Division, embarked on their own campaign, successfully taking control of important strategic, including the central seat of a region known as Yushe County. Additionally, the 120th Division focused its resources on crippling the Datong-Puzhou Railway, a vital transportation link. As the Chinese Communist forces pressed their advantage, the Japanese responded with determination, shifting their strategy to solidify their lines. For 2 months, the Japanese launched a fierce counteroffensive, which the Communists initially repelled, maintaining their hold over critical areas. Even so, the Japanese onslaught was unrelenting, and they aggressively reclaimed control of the railway lines and initiated sweeping operations in the surrounding rural regions. The ferocity of the Japanese response led to a shift in the conflict dynamics, forcing the Chinese to adapt their tactics. Instead of larger regiments advancing together, the Chinese transitioned to a more guerrilla-style approach. From then on, smaller groups carried out a series of minor but constant attacks, including ambushes, night raids, and sudden assaults, designed to disorient the Japanese forces further. As November reached its end, the Japanese had sustained substantial losses in both manpower and resources. Peng Dehuai's operation severely disrupted the Japanese communication lines and logistics networks, impairing their operational capacity for years. By December 5, 1940, the 8th Route Army's records marked more than 1,800 battles within the 100 Regiment's offensive. Over 25,000 enemy troops were incapacitated or captured, along with crucial military supplies. Fire and Fury. The 100 Regiment's offensive shattered Japan's containment strategy in northern China, consolidating resistance bases and forcing the Japanese to divert forces from the front lines. However, it was a bittersweet victory, as the Chinese forces suffered more than 17,000 casualties. On the other hand, the number of Japanese casualties varied depending on the source, with Communist reports citing 2 figures, 20,645 and 12,645. In retaliation to the surprising offensive, Commander Ryukichi Tanaka, the head of the North China Area Army, conceived an operation to ensure that these territories would be rendered utterly unusable for the enemy in the future. The result was the notorious Three Alls policy. One of the most brutal strategies in the Second Sino-Japanese War and in the history of warfare, this ruthless policy escalated the hardship endured by the Chinese population. The policy aimed not merely for retribution against the offensive, but was a calculated strategy to demoralize Chinese resistance. By directly targeting civilians, the Japanese sought to cut off communist supply routes, undermine morale, and sway public sentiment against them. The fallout from this merciless policy resulted in the destruction of entire cities, towns, and villages, with precious cultural and historical sites being reduced to rubble. Echoes of war. Despite its military success, the 100 Regiment's offensive was not without its internal controversies. Mao Zedong, the communist leader, viewed General Peng's offensive as a violation of the party's strategic policy of guerrilla warfare, which sought to preserve strength and avoid confrontations with the Japanese. In return, Peng argued that it was a necessary move to maintain communist influence among the Chinese populace and counter Japanese aggression. In the years that followed, the offensive became a focal point of contention within the Chinese Communist Party, the ultimate winner of the civil conflict. Then, as the Cultural Revolution gathered steam in the 1960s, Peng found himself once again under increasing scrutiny for his role in an offensive that had taken place decades before, and was accused of launching the offensive without consulting Chairman Mao or the Central Military Committee, effectively bypassing the established chain of command. These criticisms eventually led to Peng's downfall during the revolution. Once a celebrated military leader, he was purged from the party in 1967 and was exiled to the remote Jiangxi province. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the 100 Regiment's offensive. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, please consider subscribing to Dark Docs and our entire Dark Documentaries family. We publish new content regularly, so stay tuned.